It's been an amazing start to the year for anyone looking to buy into the compact SUV space. Two of the most awaited launches happened in January, the Tata Harrier and the Nissan Kicks. But given their price, positioning and their size, they are literally a segment apart. The Harrier, it goes after the big boys, the Jeep Compass and the Mahindra XUV 500, whereas the Kicks, it's got a more difficult job cut out for itself. It takes on its own sibling, the Renault Captur, and it also takes on the bigger brands, Maruti Suzuki with its S-Cross and Hyundai with its Creta. The Terrano and the Duster, they are not a part of this competition because they are more utilitarian in their appeal. In fact, that is the reason why the Kicks and the Captur were conceived in the first place, to add that much needed cosmopolitan alternative. So how do these cosmopolitan urban SUVs compare with each other? Let's find out. Because these are urban SUVs and not the utilitarian ones like the Duster, the Terrano or the Scorpio, you're ideally looking for a more sophisticated design, something that is a little more cosmopolitan in its appeal. I think the Kicks looks quite good. It's very smart looking, it's stylish, it's got some striking features. I particularly like the sharp design theme used for the headlamps, the tail lamps. I also like the dual tone color scheme that has been used for the roof and the bodywork. The face is quite neutral, but it still looks quite good with that imposing V-shaped grille. The windshields, however, at the front and at the back, they're quite sharply raked, and that ends up making this car looking like a hatchback on stilts from certain angles. I'm not sure if that is to everyone's taste. Its sibling, the Renault Captur, has a striking design with its wedge shape, complex lights up front and the ripple effects for the tail lights. Despite the wedge shape, it has an upright stance that looks very SUV-ish, but the face is a tad too radical, making it a polarizing design. The S-Cross is the shorty of the pack and has its own appeal for anyone looking at a crossover that sits taller than a hatchback but isn't as hefty as an SUV. Its new face, however, has an extremely polarizing design too. The Creta actually has a very neutral styling, and sticking to the classic proportions of an SUV actually helps it look a lot more like an SUV compared to any of its rivals. It's also got enough sophistication in its design to make it look upmarket, and a more superior paint quality also instantly establishes it as a more premium offering. Overall, this design has the best balance of the lot, and therefore it scores the highest points in the styling department. The cabin of the Nissan Kicks is a bit of a mixed bag for me. You'll take a look at the instrumentation and the switchgear and you know it's from other Renault Nissan cars, so it doesn't feel novel enough. However, you take a look at the instrumentation and you know it's all new. This instrumentation, however, has a bit of its flaws. It isn't as slick, it's a bit laggy. Even when you connect CarPlay, it's a bit stretched, so that makes it feel a little low rent. However, the rest of the plastics, the materials, they feel a little more upmarket than what you have in the Captur. My little grudge is the space management isn't that great, and at this price point, I don't even get a cup holder. It's a bit of a downer, isn't it? The Captur is better at making the most of such cubby holes and spaces for knickknacks. The quality of materials and the fit and finish is on par with the Kicks, but feels a bit low rent for this price bracket. The S-Cross was once the flag bearer or the flagship for the Nexa initiative by Maruti Suzuki, and it justifies that position with a very premium look and feel inside the cabin. The design of the dashboard, the cabin, it's very simple yet functional, and compared to what the exterior design or the dimension would suggest, the interior is actually quite roomy and spacious. But it's the Creta that hits the sweet spot. The cabin feels like it's from a segment higher in terms of its premium feel. The fit and finish is on par with some of the more expensive cars. Its touchscreen infotainment system is the best in class too. It also has the roomiest cabin of this lot and has an exceptionally good space management for the occupants as well as the storage. Even in terms of the features, the Creta is quite well spec'd too. It misses out on some essentials like automatic headlights and rain sensing wipers, but features like an electrically adjustable seat, a sunroof and wireless charging give it a clear edge over its rivals. Things tilt further in the favor of the Creta with the safety features. While all these cars kept the standard safety kit to ABS with EBD and 2 airbags, the Creta allows you to have up to 6 airbags in its range-topping trim, while the Kicks and the Captur allow you up to 4. The Maruti Suzuki S-Cross has the smallest engine of this test, the 1.3-litre Fiat-sourced multi-jet diesel engine, an absolute favorite in the Maruti Suzuki lineup. So favorite in fact that when Maruti Suzuki gave the S-Cross its facelift, it axed the higher 1.6-litre engine option that the S-Cross had, because the 1.3-litre could do most of the things that the 1.6 could. So they kept it as the hero for the S-Cross. Now, despite being the least powerful of this test and being less powerful than some of the other engines around in this particular price bracket, it still manages to do its daily chores quite well, and that is because this engine in the S-Cross is also mated to the smart hybrid technology, which makes driving in the city an absolute breeze. The Nissan Kicks and the Renault Captur both use the potent and likeable 1.5-litre DCI engine from the Renault Nissan family. Both of them have it in the same 110 PS tune. However, the gearing is different, and that shows in the way these cars drive, the difference in their driving and in their acceleration. The Kicks, it's quite good for the city drives. It's also quite fun to drive around the twisties. The short gearing also gives it a good drive out of corners. On the highway, however, it loses out of breath. The top end is just not there. It's got a light clutch operation, so again, driving in the city is not a problem at all. The Captur, on the other hand, has a very springy clutch, so if you're driving in the city in bumper-to-bumper traffic, it gets quite cumbersome. Around twisties, the engine in the Captur, the way it's tuned, it needs you to keep it on the boil. But on the highway, it's an excellent highway cruiser. It also has a more relaxed driving RPM when you're cruising at about 100 kilometers an hour. So if you want to go highway cruising, the Captur is your car. If you want to drive in the city, the Kicks is the one to go for. In our tests, the Kicks was also the slowest to the ton, and we blame the short gearing for it, which needs you to move into the 4th gear to hit 100 kilometers an hour. The flip side is fairly better roll-on acceleration. The engine in the Creta is not only the most powerful and the quickest of this lot, it's also the most flexible. Compared to the 1.3-litre engine in the Maruti Suzuki or the 1.5 in the Renault and Nissan, which have a pronounced turbo lag and also make their turbocharging so loud and evident, this one has a more linear power delivery. So the overall drivability is much easier, more likable in the Creta. Driving in the city needs a little getting used to though, since the first gear feels quite eager and makes its power benefit evident. The Creta's powertrain is also the most refined of the lot and a benchmark for many diesel engines in this capacity. The differences in the outputs, tuning and the gearing of all these cars shows in the fuel economy too, and the best example are the Kicks and the Captur. The Captur was the best compared to the competition by leaps and bounds, while the Kicks turned out to be the least fuel efficient of the lot. The Kicks and the Captur both have a sense of invincibility about them, and that is thanks to the lovely underpinnings of the Duster. If you're going to be driving around trails or mild off-road trails, then one of these is the car for you. You don't even have to look at the S-Cross or the Creta. Even if your driving commutes every day include a lot of poor roads, again, these could make for a very good choice. However, there is a sense of rigidity that this platform brings with it, and that rigidity is also the reason why this car bounces around quite a bit around undulations. It even feels trashy on the sharper bumps, and that just takes away from that premium feel that you expect from an urban crossover. What further hampers or takes away that premium feel is the steering setup. Now, as a driving enthusiast, I like the kind of feedback it gives me. However, the way it weighs up is quite inconsistent, and there's just a lot of kickback. Even now, even after all these years, they've not been able to iron out that kickback. And for a driver who is upgrading from maybe a hatchback or a compact sedan, this kickback can be quite overwhelming, especially if it hits you when you're about to take a turn or when you're mid-corner, and there is plenty of it. Even the smallest pebble on the road or even a small rumble strip can have an adverse effect on the way the steering feels. The S-Cross has a more precise steering, but there's a fair bit of torque steering when tackling bends that hampers its handling characteristics. Avoid it and you will appreciate the way the S-Cross handles. The low center of gravity certainly helps in that regard too. The ride over undulations and poor roads is usually met with a lot of noise from the suspension, but it doesn't translate to too many jolts inside the cabin. But the Creta is far more composed when it comes to tackling potholes and undulations. It does it extremely well. It's also a surprisingly precise handler than what its size and its badge would otherwise suggest. It's also got a very balanced steering setup, which is likable for a lot of people. In fact, these balanced dynamics are what make the Creta such a likable urban SUV. And in the process, it awards it the most amount of points as well. The braking feel of the Creta and the S-Cross is the easiest to get used to with their progressive bite. The brakes in the Kicks and the Captur feel more grabby in comparison and can be cumbersome for city use. But that also translates into better stopping power overall, as these figures reflect. Another aspect where the Nissan aces its rivals is the kind of warranty that it offers for better peace of mind over a long-term ownership. However, this car leaves you wanting for more when you compare it to its rivals. Frankly, I had a lot of expectations from the Nissan Kicks, and I hate to say this, but it's a bit of a hit and miss. I think they've done a very good job with the design, and it also nicely masks what is underneath. Compared to the Captur, which still has hints of the Duster's design to it, this one doesn't look anything like the Terrano. Both these cars, they incorporate low-cost platforms, which is a great idea on paper because it allows them to be a larger car in a smaller price bracket. But at the same time, that same low-cost platform also brings with it packaging restrictions, and it's evident in the kind of kit that these two cars offer. On the other hand, the Creta and the S-Cross are apt examples of great packaging, so much so that both of them offer tremendous value at their own price points. And furthermore, the Creta, it's been getting a drip feed of updates ever since it was launched. It not only helps it remain more fresh and relevant, but it also upsets the competition from various segments by constantly upping the game and setting new benchmarks. So much so that its multifaceted personality reflects in the kind of points that it has amassed in this comparison test, winning this comparison test by a huge margin.